The Moses Beaver inquest has wrapped up. Council discusses infrastructure priorities. And the OPP shooting death investigation continues. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. After almost a month, the inquest has now wrapped up into the death of Indigenous artist Moses Beaver. The 56-year-old man had been suffering from a mental health crisis in his remote community in 2017 and died a month later after hanging himself in his Thunder Bay jail cell. Earlier today, the jury signed off on 63 recommendations to prevent similar cases from happening in the future. Mike Lang has been following this story, and he joins us live in studio with more. Mike?
Thanks, Riley. The jury concluded that Beaver's death could have been prevented if he had greater access to mental health services in his home of Nibinamik First Nation and if the Thunder Bay District Jail had better crisis management. The jury's 63 recommendations were made to help improve mental health care for remote First Nations. The Ministry of Health was urged to fund Orange Air ambulances to expand their mental health transport team program so that they can provide 24/7 emergency support for mental health patients in remote communities. In Beaver's case, bad weather and a lack of available aircraft delayed his transportation to larger crisis centers in Sioux Lookout or Thunder Bay. Therefore, the recommendations also suggest for mobile mental health and addictions clinics to be created in remote territories to prevent mental health crises from getting worse as it did for Beaver.
The thoughtfulness and the direction of those recommendations, I think, really speaks to the impact that Moses had on everyone around him, and certainly it had an impact on the jury, and they showed us that through the very carefully drafted recommendations that they provided to the parties.
One of the lawyers working with coroner in this inquest, Julian Roy, says the jury's recommendations will help save lives.
We're very, very proud of the work that they did. They were very attentive to the evidence. They worked very hard in their deliberations, and they've come up with a comprehensive set of recommendations that we really are hopeful will help to save lives both in northern communities and in Ontario's correctional facilities.
The recommendations also state that all frontline staff and district jail staff should receive more extensive training and cultural awareness about remote reserves. Casper says the awareness raised from Beaver's case could also encourage those who are on the verge of crisis to seek some of the help they need from within their community.
We've also seen the beauty of Indigenous community, Indigenous family, where they fill that gap and they do the advocacy. Now we just need to make sure that on the other end of family and community, we have those working in the systems that are ready to receive and to listen.
As the recommendations are applied across all levels, Casper adds that the next step is to determine how to overcome the barriers of their implementation. Mike Lang, TBT News.
A murder trial was held in Thunder Bay this week regarding a tragic incident in Manitouwadge 2 years ago. The accused is charged with second-degree murder in the stabbing death of his younger brother. 40-year-old Jesse Allen was arrested in January of 2021. The victim, 18-year-old Wayne Allen, was stabbed twice in the chest at the family home in Manitouwadge. Lawyers for both sides say there's no disputing that Jesse Allen stabbed his brother. However, Allen's lawyer is asking the jury to consider the lesser charge of manslaughter, arguing that his client did not intend to kill his brother. Throughout the trial this week, the court heard from the father of the two brothers and another witness who was there when it happened, along with OPP and paramedics who attended the scene. The jury is expected to deliver its verdict next week. On Monday, City Council will be discussing a list outlining Thunder Bay's top 25 infrastructure priorities, collectively estimated to cost $275 million. The list, which was compiled by City Administration, doesn't confirm the projects will be completed, but the document will be an important part of securing funding moving forward. Silos Bellos reports.
An infrastructure priority list, which includes a variety of desired city projects, will be presented to Council on Monday night. The list includes projects that are not fully funded from a variety of sectors and combined are estimated to cost around more than $275 million to complete. It includes some big recreational endeavors such as the indoor turf facility and Centennial Botanical Conservatory, as well as revitalization projects like the Victoriaville demolition and work at Prince Arthur's Landing. The list does not include routine roadwork projects or projects with outside partnerships or agencies, meaning the potential new police headquarters is not represented.
This list is not a confirmation that these 25 projects will be done by 2030.
City Manager Norm Gale stresses the public should not expect all 25 projects to be completed, as there's a considerable amount of work outside of the list.
City of Thunder Bay does not have enough money to fund every single project on that list. And that list are 25 top priorities. There are other infrastructure and capital projects that are not included on that list. So council will be thoughtful and will be careful in what they say yes to.
With these infrastructure projects not fully funded, the city will have to rely on higher levels of government and the private sector moving forward. Gale says establishing this priority list is something the province and feds appreciate when considering funding.
It just is the reality. So we need to go to Ontario mostly, but also Canada, and say these are the priorities that we have iterated. These are the priorities that you require of us, and this is what we need the funding for. So when it's prioritized, when it's identified, it is helpful in discussions with government.
Of the main considerations in creating the infrastructure priority list included operational needs, health and safety, and recreation. Gale says costs represented are only estimates and could easily change given the labor market, supply chains, and the instability of inflation. Vasilios Bellos, TBT News.
Premier Doug Ford responded to questions in Southern Ontario yesterday about his plans to develop the Ring of Fire. The Neskantaga First Nation has vowed to do whatever it takes to block the construction of a road over the Attawapiskat River, which runs through the community and their traditional lands. Ford says he doesn't want to see conflict, but he remains committed to supporting Martin Falls and Webequa's plans to build access roads to the remote region.
You know something, we're building that Ring of Fire sure as I'm talking to you. It's going to benefit First Nations community. Webequay, as you said, and Martin Falls is leading the environmental assessment up in that area. We put $1 billion towards the roads, but this isn't just going to bring opportunity and employment to First Nations community. It's going to bring proper health care to the community. It's going to bring fresh food to the community. These communities are flying communities, and they're struggling. And you know, we're going to work with the First Nations community. We'll always be collaborative. And I think your numbers are a little wrong. It's not 7 that are against it. We have a few, and I think one's 300 kilometers away. But we're going to work with them anyways.
Fort William First Nation has received a notice from Canada Post that unleashed dogs continue to be an issue in the community. The post office says if mail carriers feel threatened in any way, they have the right to refuse delivery service on that day. The local union president for postal workers says the mail carrier serving the First Nation is highly cautious about leaving their vehicle to deliver mail to the community mailbox, as they have had previous encounters with loose dogs. The First Nation responded with a memo to all residents to properly restrict dogs to their own property and to keep them on a leash of significant strength. The 2 women running for chief in Fort William, Georgianne Morrisseau and Michelle Solomon, agree that unleashed dogs are a real safety concern for the community.
You never know if a dog gets triggered. So, you know, best thing is that, you know, to continue to express and stress to our members that, you know, love your pets, but please, you know, keep them, you know, contained or, you know, safely and properly so that, you know, not only the postal service workers, but also that members, the overall safety of our community can continue to be strong.
I'm afraid of dogs, so, you know, I'm not really comfortable with dogs running at large either. And there was recently a mauling of a child that could have ended far worse than it did. And I would like for us to resolve that issue before something happens to a child, for sure.
According to provincial law, dog owners are responsible for any damages that result from an attack on another person and could be fined up to $10,000 along with jail time. The Thunderwolf racing team at Lakehead University unveiled their TWR15 race car today. It's LU's entry for this year's Formula SAE race, an international competition that challenges engineering students to design, finance, build, and then compete with their own race cars built from scratch. It was a sunny day on campus where a crowd gathered to witness the mechanical engineering program's annual reveal. The race car was built by a group of students who, as a perk of the competition, were given the chance last September to travel to the Tesla factory in California, paid for by the company that sponsors the race. Assistant team captain Matthew Manton spoke more about the race car and says local residents will get a chance to check it out in person.
We put our budget at about $30,000 this year. That includes everything, building the car, travel, and lodging down at the competition. To date, we've raised about $15,000, and actually our members made up the rest, pay for it themselves. That's just how dedicated we are and how excited we are about this project. We got our brand new trailer, which will be perfect for pulling our car out to car shows, and you can absolutely expect to see this car at car shows this summer.
They learn how to apply stuff with these courses, fundamental courses, in design, particularly material and stuff like that. But they have the passion, which is the driving force, actually, because they wanted to do something like this.
The team is heading out next week to the competition at the Michigan International Speedway, where they'll be competing against teams of students from across the world. Patrons at Intercity Shopping Centre were given a musical treat this morning. The Westgate Collegiate Concert Band performed a free concert in the mall's promotions court. The band played classic hit songs like Low Rider and YMCA for any shoppers who were passing by. The band is comprised of grade 11 and 12 music students, along with a few grade 10s using woodwind, brass, and percussion instruments. Music teacher Tom Cashmore says it gave the students a chance to show off all the songs they've learned this year, ranging from pop and R&B to traditional music.
They've been working hard all semester on just preparing for their concert, and we end up with so much music that I say, well, you guys know about 15 pieces. For their final concert, they only get to play about 4 or 5, so I said, let's go out into the community and play everything you guys have learned, and the idea is to share live music. Music is about sharing it with people.
Oh, it was good. I think we had a good showing. I don't think we were supposed to be the focal point, but I think that all the pieces sounded really good. And I'm glad with how it turned out.
The concert band will also be performing for fellow students in the Westgate Cafetorium on June 8th and at the high school's graduation ceremony at the Community Auditorium on June 26th. Well, Fiona, it was another gorgeously beautiful day outside today.
It really was a nice way to wrap up the week. Not quite as warm as yesterday, but a high of 23. Can't turn up your nose at that. And a low of 7. It was partly to mostly cloudy most of the day, and winds were from the east 14 to 23 kilometers an hour. Now, to the west, lots of sunshine in Fort Frances. They had a crazy mild night. They only dropped down to 14 overnight, but they've warmed up to a high of 25, which is where they're sitting right now. Atikokan matching that, as is Kenora. Dryden, Upsala, just a degree cooler at 24, 25 in Red Lake as well, and that too is their high for the day. They've had increasing clouds throughout the afternoon. So they are currently under mostly cloudy conditions. 24 in Sioux Lookout and Armstrong, 21 in Greenstone, which is again the high for the day, and they had lots of sunshine, so I don't think anybody was complaining about not hitting as warm as some other locations in the region. Nipigon currently matching that, 23 in Marathon, and Sault Ste. Marie has topped out with a high of 24 at this time. They too are under mostly cloudy conditions. Now here in the city of Thunder Bay tonight, we will drop down to a low of 9 under partly cloudy skies. Winds will taper off quite nicely from the northeast down to about 9 kilometers per hour. And then for Saturday, temperatures are going to take a little bit of a hit. But remember, when you're topping out with highs in the low 20s, that is well above normal. So even though it will be cooler, it will still be within seasonal range. And for Thunder Bay, that's around 16, 17 Celsius. Now, we still have that system to the to the southwest. But again, it's not moving anywhere. It's just kind of stuck and kind of weakening over the next few days. So we are looking at a little bit of clouds in some parts of the region, but Once Saturday passes, the temperatures are going to slowly rise once again, and I'll have more details on what you can expect for Mum's Day later on in the news hour.
Well, thank you so much, Fiona. Well, yesterday we brought you the news of that tragic shooting death of an Eastern Ontario OPP officer. And today we bring you the reactions of a community in shock. We'll have that and more as your Friday News Hour continues.
Letting everybody know anything helps, donation, even a letter to the family, any services that could be provided to them.